Hello everyone, I am Abhinav Gupta. On this channel, we talk about the problems and their solutions that we face in our real life related with software development lifecycle. Today, we will talk about serverless. We will discuss what is serverless, why we need serverless, and pros and cons of serverless. Let's first understand what serverless means. Does it mean there is no server involved? The answer is no. There is always a server, but being a developer, you don't need to care about that. You outsource this work to the cloud provider. You don't need to create server, maintain server, deploy server. Rather than that, you can focus on your features and functionalities. Nowadays, most of the cloud providers provide this service as function as a service, where you can run your functions. Here, we follow event-driven architecture, which is again an ecosystem provided by cloud provider with features like IoT or database. Almost all cloud providers provide this service but with different names, like AWS has lambda function, GCP has cloud function, Azure has Azure functions. Now the question is why we need serverless. If you connect with the internet, you access hundreds of servers. For example, for emails you use email server, for games you use gaming server, for web pages you use web server. The problem with server is they need to be flexible. Like if you add plenty of services to your server and you get handful of users, so your server remain idle. Like you pay for the services but you don't utilize them. This is called over-provisioning. On the other hand, if you add few services to your server and you overwhelmed with the users, so it slows down the server and finally crash it. This is called under-provisioning. Identify how many resources you need to execute your server well is almost impossible. If you overestimate your traffic, it impacts on your pocket. If you underestimate your traffic, it impacts on your quality or server. To solve this problem, cloud providers introduce serverless concept. Let's understand what happens behind the scene. With Serverful, you add services and the hardware you think you may use and you pay a set amount for each and every month. Here you may set up a baseline like I could use that much of RAM, hardware or capacity. No matter you overutilize or underutilize because you pay what you utilize. However, with serverless, you don't add any hardware and the resources. You pay based on the utilization. With serverless, you don't get any IP address because you don't set up any dedicated server. Here you get the host name, which means every time when you execute your service, you are allocated a new container and after execution, you release that container. However, with Serverful, let's say you set up an EC2 machine. So you get the IP address of that EC2 machine and that works 24/7 for you. This IP address remains endpoint of your API. Let's talk about few of the benefits of serverless. First, you pay based on the utilization. With serverless, you pay for the time when your function is running. This is pretty reasonable because your function generally run in 100 milliseconds of time. Second is auto-scalable. This is completely auto-scalable because cloud providers take this responsibility. Based on your function requirement, they upscale or downscale the server. Next is highly available. Serverless apps are highly available because fault tolerance is done by cloud providers. Next is less responsibility. When you go with serverless, you don't need to care about broken hardwares, outdated securities or buying server. Now, I might sound like a fanboy, but serverless has its downside also. Let's talk about them one by one. The billing of serverless is always dynamic. This might be challenging for a startup. In this sense, buying or renting the traditional server is more predictable. Second is, every cloud provider has its own serverless products, but they might not be compatible to each other. Databases are the best example of that. Each cloud provider provides database, but with different set of features. So in this sense, you might get locked with particular cloud provider. Next is, if you have the bigger organization, you think your server will work 24/7, then you should go with Serverful because in this case, the cost of Serverful will be lesser than the cost of serverless. It has a limit how long you can run your function. Also, in some cases, it might slow down the process because it allocate or deallocate the resources on runtime. Finally, serverless is not the best fit to solve all type of problems. Now you have clear idea what is serverful, what is serverless, when you should go with serverful and when you should go with serverless. If you have any question, you can comment down. For more related videos, subscribe our channel.